Alright guys, let's get down to business. We're doing some brakes and rotors. 02 Dodge Ram 2500 HD. 8 lugs on here. We're going to start with that 13 mil. Take these caliper bolts out. So these calipers, they lock in a certain way. Well, sometimes they switch them from side to side, whether it's up or down where it locks in. You look at the outside of the caliper, it locks in at the bottom. So the top has to come out first. So try to press that caliper just a little bit. Just to make it easier. Just grabbing the edge of the rotor to press it back. Normally we'd open our bleeder screw, but these bleeder screws are rotted right off. That's how it goes around here. We'll try to work on a brake bleeding after the job's done. See if we can heat up those bleeder screws. Hit them with some vice grips or something. We got ourselves an 18 mil on the back of the mounting bracket. This out of the way. There we go. Mounting bracket's off. These pads are locked right in there. Normally you gotta hammer these rotors off. This one's pretty loose. It's good news. Rust buildup in the back of the rotor, snagging on the hub. Just give her a couple smacks and a spin. Replacing the rotors. I'm not worried about hurting them. There we go. Pretty decent looking rotor, but the other side was nasty. Now's a good time to clean up your hub. This hub's been recently replaced. There's just rust everywhere. I'll blow that out of the way. Caliper doesn't look as bad as the other side. I could work with this. Alright, let's get our caliper pressed back. Use your C-clamp, caliper tools, big jaws, whatever you have to do. But if you press one piston, the other piston will want to shoot out. We got hardware, new hardware for this caliper mounting bracket. They go on a certain way. Make sure you take note of that. Because we don't have that bleeder screw open, you're going to want to open the cap on your reservoir. It fills up. These pistons will stop. I'm going to use 2 caliper turnback tools. This is a cheap one on this side. That's gonna hold that piston from coming forward while I press the other side in. Got a more heavy duty caliper turnback tool here on this side. I like this one. Center that up a little bit. Start turning my tool and get this caliper press in. Said you can use a C-clamp, whatever. The other thing we're gonna do is make sure these sliders are sliding on this caliper. These slide pins should be free. We're gonna take those out, wire wheel them. That one's really stiff. Press it all the way that way and get yourself some vice grips or pliers and try to work it out of there. Those need to be free sliding. So we're gonna wire wheel those and put some Seal Glide brake lubricant on them. Shove them back in there and then press them all the way back for install. So I'll get that done. And this bracket where the hardware sits, it's pretty rusty. You take a wire brush, wire wheel, Dremel tool. I'm gonna clean these up. Put a little grease where the hardware sits to keep the hardware from rusting together. The rust expands and locks the pads in, and that's not good. So we're gonna clean and grease that up a little bit. And before you assemble these, you wanna have your brakes in there. I'll show you, because they're just a pain to get in with the rotor on and the mounting bracket bolted in. So we're gonna clean, lube, and assemble all this. All right, we got our rotor put on there, spray it down with spray cleaner. We got our caliper all pressed in, the slide pins cleaned up, put back in with some fresh grease. Cleaned up the ears of these calipers where they fit in. If those are all built up with rust, it won't fit in there right. Got the bracket all cleaned up with some fresh pads in there. New hardware installed. All right. So, with the rotor sloppy like this, sometimes they don't like to go in there. Sometimes it helps to put a lug nut in. See if I can get her to line up. Yeah, she doesn't want to line up. These calipers and brackets always give me trouble. There we go, we got the bottom one started. And these pads are gonna wanna fall out on you. Like, they fall out so easy. but then you can't get them in if you already have the bracket and rotor on. It's ridiculous. There we go. Top one started. You can go ahead and tighten those down. Nice and tight. When you're tightening this bracket down, you're going to want to hold your pads together so they don't fall off. There we go. Now we got our caliper. Make sure your slides are all the way in, so they're sticking out the back. And we got that groove on the bottom on this side, on the passenger side. And that's got to fit in first. If you don't have your piston pressed all the way back far enough with fresh pads and rotors, it's not going to fit in. All right. I'll straighten up this rotor a little bit. And it's starting to slide into place. You know what? We are going to do that. Yeah, this caliper could be a little tricky. You want that rotor to be straight. It keeps moving on me. Just put it on there lightly to keep the rotor straight. Alright, we're getting held up by that pin, the slider. Just gotta press it back a little, there we go. Fell into place at the top, beautiful. That's why those have to be all the way back. And these could be tricky to line up. The other side gave me trouble. Let's see what this slide does. If they're real rusty, make sure you bring them to the wire wheel. If you're having trouble lining these up, you don't want to play with your caliper. Get a flashlight on it and see if you're going in straight. That one actually started. That one started. Alright, the other side I had to play with a lot. Move the caliper around, kind of give it a little shimmy, a little tap, and eventually they lined up. The biggest pain about this is cleaning up rusty calipers and mounting brackets on this side. That rust was built up so much in the mounting bracket on the other side, you couldn't even put pads in it. It would have just been too tight. But these are real thin bolts, so you don't want to snap them off. You get them nice and tight. Don't use excessive force and snap them, because they're so thin. So this is the brake pad and rotor replacement. Caliper press in right here. If your ABS wire comes off of there, just snap it back in. And there's that. Now we got to go through the trouble of trying to bleed it with deteriorated bleeder screws. You know, you may end up replacing a caliper or something, but that fluid's pretty nasty. We want to get it out of there. All right, that wraps up the pads and rotors video.